Several pieces of childhood media are somewhat of a family affair. For example, Sooty was performed by both Harry Corbett and his son, Matthew. Berenstain Bears were created by husband and wife Stan and Jan Berenstain, with their son Mike taking up the pen after their retirement. Jean de Brunhoff's Babar stories were continued by his son Laurent. And The Muppets were created by Jim Henson and further developed by his children Brian, Lisa, John, Heather, and Cheryl. The same can be said for the Railway series and Thomas the Tank Engine with the Awdry family. Who are the Awdry family members, though? What was their role in creating the Railway series? This video will hopefully explain just that. This is the Awdry family tree. It starts with the Reverend Wilbert Awdry's paternal grandparents and ends on his children. In this video, we shall look at the lives of Wilbert Awdry's paternal grandparents, his aunts and uncles, his parents, his siblings, his wife, and his children. John Wither Awdry was born in 1795 in Naughton House, Laycock, Wiltshire, as the eldest son of John Jeremiah and Jane Big Wither Awdry, their family going all the way back to 17th century Wiltshire. According to Brian Sibley's biography of Wilbert Awdry, John was called to the bar in 1822 and in 1830 was appointed a puisne judge in Bombay, British India. After 9 years' service, Sir John was promoted to Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Bombay. That same year, his first wife passed away. He quickly remarried to the woman that would become Wilbert Awdry's grandmother. Frances Ellen Carr was born in 1820 in Bombay, the daughter of Reverend Thomas Carr, the Bishop of Bombay. Upon their marriage in 1839, Frances was barely 19 and Sir John was 43. The couple would go on to have 12 children between 1840 and 1860. In 1842, Sir John and Frances returned to England with their family, and upon the death of Sir John's father, the family inherited the Awdry's ancestral home of Naughton House. Both Sir John and Frances led a very content life at Naughton House, raising their children and grandchildren and entertaining guests. Sir John Awdry died in 1878 at the age of 82. Frances followed in 1900, aged 79. Of Sir John and Frances's children, Thomas was the oldest. After marriage, he lived for a while in New Zealand. Their next son, William, was a schoolmaster and later an Anglican priest, eventually moving to Japan to serve as the Bishop of Osaka and South Tokyo. Daughter Sarah married Reverend Luke Walford, but he passed away shortly after the marriage. She eventually worked as a housekeeper for her younger brother Vere. Son Ambrose joined the Royal Engineers and served as aide-de-camp to the governor of Madras, but died in a riding accident. Daughter Frances, or Fanny, as the family called her, never married, but she had a gift of storytelling. Son Charles joined the firm of W.H. Smith & Son, rising from the bottom up and amassing a healthy fortune to save the family home of Naughton House. Son James served in the merchant service, but caused a scandal when he eloped with the Awdry's household governess and ran off to New Zealand. Daughter Elizabeth married Lionel Barrington Simeon, an engineer who helped with infrastructure projects in northern India and the Himalayas. The couple had 7 children before Lionel's death from malaria in 1896. Son Herbert was somewhat of an eccentric, but eventually became classics master at Wellington College, Crowthorne in Berkshire. Daughter Mary, or Polly, had a less than happy relationship with her husband, Reverend Frederick Creamer, but was remembered for her gift at gardening and sketching. Lastly, daughter Priscilla was the youngest child of the Awdry family. Priscilla, or Prilly, never married, but had a love for cats and kept house for her eccentric brother Herbert. Vere Awdry was born in 1854, the youngest son of both Sir John and Frances Awdry. In spite of being the youngest son, he was well liked and doted on by his elder brothers William and Herbert. Young Vere wanted to join the army, but his father, lacking money for a commission, had Vere join a solicitor's firm in Buckinghamshire. After Sir John's death in 1878, Vere decided to join his brother William at Chichester Theological College. By 1887, Vere was ordained into the Anglican Church and became curate of North Bradley with Southwick in Wiltshire. Life was pretty rough for him, though. His first wife, Margaret, died in childbirth, and their daughter Hildred died at the age of 2 in 1891. His second wife Mary died of cancer, and their daughter Bridget died of appendicitis, aged just 7. Nonetheless, Vere was a very popular clergyman, serving in the parishes of Broadhinton, Wiltshire, and later Ampfield in Romsey. In 1906, he and his son Carroll took up the hobby of model railways, building most of the implements and rolling stock by hand. In 1908, Vere's niece introduced him to Lucy Louisa Barry. The date and place of Lucy Louisa Barry's birth are not definite. Some sources claim she was born in 1878 in India, while others claim she was born in Hampshire in 1885. Her father, Percival Barry, was a Darjeeling tea planter. In England, she joined the staff of Winchester High School and became friends with Edith Simeon, Vere Awdry's niece, often visiting the Ampfield Vicarage with Edith. Vere and Lucy got on pretty well, and in 1909 the two were married at the Ampfield Vicarage. Vere was 54, at least 25 years older than Lucy. The couple had a happy marriage and 2 sons, Wilbert and George. Vere became the popular figure he was once around in Ampfield. However, in 1914, Vere's son Carroll was killed in action during the First World War. Vere never truly got over Carroll's death, and in 1917, Vere moved his family back to Wiltshire in the village of Box. As the years wore on, Vere's health began to decline. Trips to the seaside were beneficial, but by 1928, he was in very dire condition. Just 2 days before his and Lucy's 19th anniversary, Vere passed away at the age of 74. Lucy and the house governess, Gertie Watmore, moved to a house in Devizes, Wiltshire, close to Wilbert and George's school. She was greatly devoted to both of her sons as they grew up. After Wilbert married and George got a job as a London librarian, Lucy moved in with George and stayed with him until her passing in 1972. Carroll Edward Vere Awdry was born in 1894 in Broadhinton, Wiltshire, the son of Reverend Vere Awdry and his second wife, Mary Louisa Mann. As a boy, Carroll moved with his family to the parish of Ampfield in Hampshire, where his parents soon became popular among the locals. In 1900, Carroll's older sister Bridget died of appendicitis, aged just 7. In 1906, a 12-year-old Carroll acquired a small model locomotive and coaches, and he and his father spent many hours building a model railway around the Ampfield Vicarage. In 1908, though, tragedy struck again when Carroll's mother died of cancer, aged just 55. By this time, Carroll had started attending school in Marlborough College, Wiltshire. In 1909, Carroll's father remarried, and in 1911, Carroll became the older brother and godparent of their first child and his half-brother, Wilbert. Carroll was deeply attached to Wilbert, taking his baby half-brother for bicycle rides and letting him play on the Ampfield Model Railway. Upon leaving Marlborough, Carroll enrolled in Sandhurst Military College, graduating in 1914 with the rank of second lieutenant. That year, though, war broke out in Europe. Carroll and the Royal Munster Fusiliers were part of the first expeditionary force sent to the continent. During a retreat from German forces after the Battle of Mons, Carroll was shot through the lungs and died instantly. He was buried outside the village of Étreux in Picardy, France, aged just 20. Reverend Awdry was deeply devastated by his son's death. It was also one of many factors that made Wilbert Awdry a conscientious objector during the Second World War. George Edward Vere Awdry was born in 1916 in Ampfield, Hampshire, the second son of Reverend Vere and Lucy Awdry. George was a sickly child, often coming down with illnesses and complications, along with bouts of jealousy from his older brother Wilbert. Nonetheless, the two boys grew up close together. In 1917, the Awdrys moved to Box in Wiltshire, next to the Great Western Main Line from Paddington to Bristol. George and Wilbert could often hear the sounds of the trains from their bedroom, and enjoyed rail travel immensely. During school holidays, the two boys would set up a model railway in a garden shed. George attended Dauncey's School in West Lavington, the same as his brother Wilbert, during which time his father passed away. Upon leaving Dauncey's, George followed his older brother to St. Peter's Hall, Oxford, where he studied librarianship. Although a resident student, he still lived with his mother and former nurse Gertie Watmore outside his old school of Dauncey's, and assisted his brother Wilbert on occasion. During World War II, George assisted in clandestine operations through his knowledge of the German language, but these operations and his exact involvement are ultimately unknown. After the war, George served as a librarian for the Institute of Mining and the National Liberal Club, along with being a member of the British Interplanetary Society and the Richard III Society. As a librarian, he often passed on old copies of the Railway Gazette to his brother Wilbert for use in Wilbert's Railway Series stories. When Wilbert sought to create a world for his stories, George assisted in mapping out what would become the island of Sodor, and assisted in writing up a history of the island from its Norse origins to its present rail infrastructure. This history eventually became the book The Island of Sodor, Its People, History, and Railways. He even journeyed with Wilbert and his nephew Christopher on holidays to railways across the United Kingdom and abroad. In his personal life, George tried sparking relationships with several women, but nothing ever led to marriage. He lived with both his mother and Gertie Watmore until both ladies passed away. George himself passed away in 1994, at the age of 78. Margaret Emily Whale was born in 1912. She studied at the University of London and became a teacher for the English High School at Haifa, where she met Wilbert Awdry. She attended Wilbert's tours around Jerusalem and often spent time with him during faculty parties at St. George's School in Jerusalem. Wilbert proposed to her during an outing to the ancient city of Petra in Jordan, and in 1936 the two returned to England when Wilbert became ordained as a deacon in the Anglican Church. In 1937, Wilbert was ordained a priest, and the next year he and Margaret were married at St. George's Church in Worcester. Wilbert's mother was at first skeptical about Margaret, but soon she and Margaret became good friends. In 1939, the German army invaded Poland, sparking World War II. It was expected of Wilbert to become an army chaplain, but he declined to call to arms, believing it against his conscience. In 1940, Wilbert and Margaret's first son Christopher was born. Later that year, the young family moved to Wilbert's new post as curate for St. Nicholas Church, Kings Norton, Birmingham. Christopher would be followed by two more children, Veronica in 1941 and Hilary in 1946. While serving at St. Nicholas, Wilbert started to write down some stories he would tell his children about 3 railway engines. Margaret persuaded Wilbert to publish these stories, which became the groundwork for the Railway Series as we know it today. After Veronica's birth, Wilbert accepted a new position as rector of Ellsworth and Knapwell in Cambridgeshire, where he served until 1950, and from 1953 to 1965, he served as vicar of Emneth in Norfolk. Apart from his ministry, Wilbert volunteered on heritage railway lines. He wrote articles for the Church of England newspaper, and continued writing his children's book series, The Railway Series. Margaret wasn't much of a railway enthusiast, but she still supported her husband's writing and his exploits with railways. In 1965, Wilbert retired from the ministry. He and Margaret moved to a small house in Stroud, Gloucestershire. In 1972, Wilbert retired from writing the Railway Series stories, but continued taking trips around the country and volunteering at heritage railways. In the 1980s, he became acquainted with TV producer Britt Allcroft, who would eventually adapt the Railway Series stories to television. Wilbert and his son Christopher became involved in the production, writing stories for the show that would become Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. By the late 1980s, Margaret's health began to decline. In 1989, she suffered a heart attack and died at the age of 77. Later that year, Wilbert suffered several bad falls and was confined to a wheelchair. His condition improved slightly over the next 2 years, allowing him to visit his children and grandchildren and attend social functions. In 1995, though, Wilbert's health took a turn for the worse, and he was confined to bed. In 1996, he was awarded an Officer of the Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II, but being too ill to attend the ceremonies, was awarded his honour by the Lord Lieutenant of Gloucestershire, Sir Henry Elwes. He died peacefully in his sleep at his home in 1997, aged 85. Christopher Vere Awdry was born in 1940 in Devizes Hospital, Wiltshire, the first child of Reverend Wilbert and Margaret Awdry. Christopher was a healthy baby, but did have a bout of pneumonia after the Awdrys moved to Kings Norton. As World War II raged on and air raids became routine, the Awdrys kept their baby son safe under a stairwell in their house. When Christopher was 2, he contracted measles and was relegated to a darkened room with very little for entertainment. After Wilbert and Margaret exhausted their supply of stories and nursery rhymes, Wilbert began creating his own stories to entertain Christopher, drawing accompanying pictures of 3 railway engines. Christopher's condition soon improved, and the stories his father made up soon became bestsellers across the world. Christopher and his sisters would often serve as test subjects for Wilbert's new railway series stories. Wilbert would even make a model of Edward for Christopher to play with. For Christmas one year, Wilbert made Christopher a new tank engine made out of dowels and a broomstick, which became known as Thomas, and also became a railway series character in his own right. When Thomas received his own railway series book, Christopher received an acknowledgement from his father on the book's first page. When Christopher was 5, the Awdrys moved to Ellsworth in Cambridgeshire. While in Ellsworth, Christopher and his father began their own model railway in the vicarage attic. Being the son of a clergyman, Wilbert had expectations for Christopher and his sisters to say grace at mealtimes and say their evening prayers before bed. During the 1950s, Christopher would accompany his family on holidays to railways across the United Kingdom, meeting a tram engine while in Norfolk and volunteering at the Talyllyn Railway in Wales. In 1952, Christopher received a place at St. Chad's Choir School in Staffordshire, while his parents lived in the parish of Emneth in Norfolk. In 1954, Christopher received a choral scholarship to Worksop College in Nottinghamshire. Christopher left Worksop in 1948 with 5 O-levels, which disappointed his parents somewhat. Instead of moving on to university like his father, Christopher began working at a publishing firm in the UK. While working at East Midland Allied Press in Peterborough, Christopher met Elaine Checkley, and the two married in 1968, and their daughter Verity was born in 1971. Christopher and Elaine were members of the Peterborough Church Choir and took part in the local precinct players' performances. However, Christopher felt his marriage to Elaine was stifling his creativity. The couple separated in 1976, then divorced in 1979. That year, Christopher remarried with Diana Scott, who had performed with the Peterborough Gilbert and Sullivan Society, and was a gifted singer. Their son Richard was born in 1980. Diana grew up next to a railway and shared some of Christopher's passion for railways, and also stoked his creative passions for writing. However, the two would divorce in 2006. During a 1982 trip to the Nene Valley Railway, Christopher got the idea to continue his father's railway series books. With support from his children, his wife, and his parents, Christopher submitted the new stories to K. Ward, and continued to write new railway series volumes until 2011. The volumes were a great success, prompting Christopher to quit his job with the Inland Revenue. When Britt Allcroft created the Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends television series in 1984, some of Christopher's stories were adapted for the show. Today, Christopher still serves as an ambassador to his and his father's work, along with being an outspoken proponent for railway preservation. Veronica Awdry was born in Kings Norton, Birmingham in 1941, the second child of Reverend Wilbert and Margaret Awdry. Her Christian name came from the family name Vere, as Wilbert wanted to keep the name alive. Growing up at her father's many parishes, she had fond memories of him writing his railway series volumes and testing out the new stories on her brother, and her sister, along with him tutoring them on saying their bedtime prayers. During family holidays to various railways around the United Kingdom, Veronica would often be left bored with her mother and her sister Hilary, while Wilbert and Christopher went to look at local railways. As Veronica approached secondary school age, Wilbert and Margaret moved to the parish of Emneth in Norfolk, since they heard very highly of the nearby Wisbech High School. Upon leaving Wisbech, Veronica studied at Leeds University and later Exeter University, where she met her future husband Richard Chambers. Veronica and Richard married in 1967 and had 2 children, Mark, born in 1972, and Claire, born in 1975. The family settled in Devon, where Veronica became an educator, largely unfazed by the attention of the railway series and Thomas and Friends. After Margaret Awdry's death in 1989, Wilbert moved in with Veronica, Richard, and family at their home in King's Tainton. When Wilbert's health began to deteriorate, Veronica and her sister Hilary moved in and helped him around his home in Stroud. After his passing in 1997, Veronica is still involved with her father's work and lives with her husband Richard in his former house in Stroud. Hilary Margaret Awdry was born in Kings Norton, Birmingham in 1946, the 3rd child of Reverend Wilbert and Margaret Awdry. Hilary's birth occurred the same month that Wilbert received editor notes from his transcript for Thomas the Tank Engine, and just before the Awdrys moved to the parish of Ellsworth in Cambridgeshire. Growing up, Hilary and her siblings would be Wilbert's toughest editors, while Wilbert, being a clergyman, would school his children on saying their nightly prayers and their table grace. When Hilary was 7, the Awdrys moved to Emneth in Norfolk, and both Hilary and her older sister Veronica attended Wisbech High School. Upon leaving Wisbech, Hilary took a domestic science course at a college of further education in Oxford and studied as an assistant matron of a boys' preparatory school. During a camping holiday in Cornwall in 1963, Christopher Awdry's school friend Alfred Fortnum served as the Awdry family's chauffeur during their stay. Alfred and Hilary struck up a friendship that would culminate in marriage in 1966. The couple would have 3 children, Sarah, born in 1969, Simon, born in 1971, and Rachel, born in 1975. Hilary worked as a homemaker during this time, but in 1987, she began lay minister training and became a licensed lay preacher in 1990. During this time, her mother passed away, and she had to deal with her father Wilbert's health issues. She preached at St. Michael and All Angels Church in Highworth, Wiltshire, and when her father passed away in 1997, she presided over his memorial service along with her siblings. In spite of a battle with cancer, she remained active with her church duties and being involved with her father's work, attending Thomas movie premieres, and even lobbying Hit Entertainment to refrain from using the term winter holidays in future Thomas episodes. In 2013, Hilary Awdry Fortnum passed away, age 67. Her husband Alfred still resides in Highworth. And that's the history of Wilbert Awdry's family. What do you guys think? Did I leave out anything important? Feel free to leave a comment below, and also don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, I'm Captain Rutledge. Good day.